Good evening, everybody. Great to have you with us on a Friday evening. I'm Shram Mascarenas and we'll be joining you for today's session. To those who are streaming us through Facebook, hello and a warm welcome to all of you. On behalf of AIESEC and University of Colombo, Sri Lanka, we warmly welcome you to the third Insight webinar session. Our topic today questions us as to whether we are an employee or an employer. Who would you rather be? I'd like to ask this question for all of us who have joined us. I understand that we have 74 viewers who have joined us on Facebook. We want to quickly ask you to drop a message on the chat box. Do you want to be an employee or do you want to be a part as an employer? An employee means the one who works in an organization or any other place of work for money, and an employer means the person or the workplace that employs an employee. So what do you want to be, an employee or an employer? I can see a lot of messages rolling in. You can drop in on the comment section on Facebook. We hope to take your questions at the end of the session for today, because we have two great personalities joining our session to share some great insights on their experience. I'm sure there are plenty of people who have a complete different experience. Some of them are preparing themselves to explore in a different arena, but we'll see how it designs a life that will be fulfilled. Now, to take you through today's discussion, our first session will be done by the Associate Director, Head of Training and Knowledge Management of Equity Knowledge Partners, who represents as our Insights 2020 representing SCCA. We have Rathnakala Kumaragurunathan joining us in our session for the first session for today. And thereafter, the second session will be joined by the Chief Operating Officer of Bristol Institute and Managing Director for Icon Business School, who is also the Principal Partner for Insight 2020. We're going to start by speaking to Rathi. Good evening.
Good evening, Sharon. How are you? How is everyone?
Apart from the political background campaign noise that's going on, I'm truly excited to be with today's session. Great to have you with today's session. Rathi, there is a lot of confusion where sometimes people feel their thinking pattern of whether I should be an employee or whether I should be an employer. But habitual of being a part of this results in a proper success and achievement. It can be both ways. How do you see this? How do you define both an employer's mindset and an employee's mindset?
Right. First of all, thank you very much for asking me to be a part of Insight 2020. Really humbled. To get things started off, I mean, it's a very good question, very tough question also. I'm just going to share screen with a very quick presentation. I won't bore you too much, but it's just a very quick few points that I've put together that will take us through some of the most important things, I think, be it an employee or an employer, you need to build, right? So not a straightforward answer as it seems, and no one can answer that question for someone else. But I do believe a lot of us, what we want is to create or build something sustainable or contribute meaningfully. But the common misconception, I think, is that to do that, you need to be an employer. But I like to think otherwise. I believe is that to build sustainable businesses, you need to have a set of employees who are as passionate and as entrepreneurial as you are. So that is the main skill that I want to talk about. And that particular scope to be entrepreneurial does not limit yourself to being an employer. You can very well do that as an employee and go the extra mile. In fact, it's actually easier because you can do that without taking the risk of actually investing the money in the business. So as an employee, a training ground to build those skills, right? So whichever you prefer to take, your objective, I believe everyone who's here, their objective is about being successful in whatever you do, being resilient in whatever you do, and being able to create something, right? So to answer that, and believing that answer is yes from most of the audience, I want to first look at some of the long-term character attributes that you need to build in order to succeed, whether you're an employer or an employee, right? So something that boils down to all of this is talent, right? So the talent that you is looked for needs to be available, right? But I'm not talking about technical skills, but I'm talking about general attitude. So something that I have realized in my short 13 years of career and a few books that I've read, I've realized that the importance of being or creating competitive advantage, of being proactive, means that the investments we make to create competitive edge for ourselves or the companies that we are part of, means that, like I said, the long-term character attributes, which we need to sort of inculcate in all aspects of our life, not just the professional part. So no, it's not going to be a philosophical lesson in the next couple of minutes. But interestingly, when you read some of the C-suite professionals who run businesses or successful entrepreneurs, when you read books on startups, what you realize is that all of these leaders typically follow a particular philosophy. And I think that philosophy is what we call stoicism. Knowingly or unknowingly, people follow that, follow stoicism, right? So stoicism is a philosophy that I stumbled upon a few years ago, thanks to my boss. It's basically the foundation. If any of you have read the book, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Effective People, the book is built on that principle. So if you haven't read that, get your hands on it. It will change your life, right? Interestingly, when you read certain other books, and I've listed down that later, Principles by Ray Dalio. Ray Dalio built one of the largest and most successful hedge funds. You will notice that stoicism is his founding philosophy for his epic life and the work approach that he basically took. So let's begin by looking at some of the foundational traits of stoicism and why choosing to be stoic is important, whether you're an employer or an employee, right? So some of the things very quickly is about, 2 main things: being resilient and being the best version of yourself. So stoicism basically is that constant drive for you to be the best version of yourself. So it's basically a philosophy that will prepare you as individuals or as companies to keep you on your feet. Typically, our individual failures or companies' individual failures have been usually underpinned to complacency, right? Because we drop the ball. Take the famous Kodak example that we rigorously study in any business subject. So being on our feet basically ensures that complacency does not seep in. And as a result, we stay prepared and sort of become immune to certain storms. So it's not to say that it's very easy. It sounds easier than said. But being resilient is largely having the emotional resilience to face the trials in sort of calm confidence, right? So it's developing thick skin to the countless blows that you may encounter, whether as a company or as an individual. So a typical metaphor that we can look at is a boxer not leaving the ring once he gets punched, right? He's trained for it and he'll continue to fight. And that is, if you take a corporate example, something like Apple, that's what they did having one of the richest cash balance sheets today. It's after basically navigating through a lot of trials in the 90s and early 2000s, right? Successful individuals also have built companies that have leveraged on change, catalysts, by focusing on this very simple thing, right? It doesn't go on to actually talk about all these fancy technical catalysts that they've taken advantage of, but it's taking that step and being able to sort of make hay productively while the sun shines, right? As opposed to just making hay, right? So individuals and companies who are able to do that or be the best version of themselves are typically people who are an eternal student. So one thing as an employer or as an employee, and your pathway to becoming an employer may be in the first few years as being an employee, is key thing is your willingness and your awareness that learning is infinite. Skills change, skills will become redundant, new skills will emerge, but we have to ride the cycle or we risk being left behind. Often we do not start learning something outside of our comfort zone because of the fear of failure that typically overpowers the success factor, right? But once you start building stoic principles in your daily life, what happens is you will start understanding that scratches happen when you train, and that resilience businesses also make mistakes, and recovering from it have been the companies that have, that we write books about, right? Right. So looking at all of this, some of those specific things that I wanted to touch on is future-proofing your skills. Why future-proof your skills? We have talked about future-proofing our skills for a long time. It's cliche, it's not something new. But whether you're an employee or an employer, we know as human beings, we have seen that change happens. We've changed from manual to digital. We've shifted from emails, letters to emails. Excuse me. We've seen different management and leadership styles emerge, but these evolutions did not happen overnight. So we have always sort of trained ourselves to learn to adapt. So these factors give rise to opportunities for disruptive competitors. All of us know during COVID, we saw a lot of small players in the grocery business who lifted themselves up, went on WhatsApp, started delivering things from your neighborhood grocery shop, which our larger players could not do because of some of the bureaucracy issues or thinking too much on the line, and basically not being able to pivot. So that future-proofing the skills is not just becoming so good at what you do, so good at what one particular thing you do, but it's about being able to, develop additional skills, right? Another very important thing, I mean, everything boils down to this in your personal life or in your company. It's a dollar and risk, right? Or rupee and risk story, right? So just the two most only relevant criteria individuals must focus on when making decisions, right? Everything boils down to this. It's also a good sanity check if the decision that we're making is actually makes sense or not, right? So individuals as employees, something I want to talk about here is that they have to also have that employer mindset, which means having the customer at the forefront of their analysis and decision making. Typically, employees who move up to the C-suite level, and Dilshad may be able to discuss this further according to his experience, but getting to that means that you've already been having that mindset as an employer, starting from being an employee, taking that ownership, being able to come out of just the operational mindset and be able to think outside the box. Another very important thing, and we all know this, it's more important than ever, is getting comfortable with uncertainty. Linear business environments are of the past. Linear lives are also of the past. All of us face trials on a daily basis. Most frequent changes in business landscape dynamics are now a norm. So even companies that boasted relatively higher level of agility and adaptability were also taken by surprise during COVID-19. What made the guys who came out of that differ were the guys who also had a set of employees who were able to take that risk, right? It's not that the employer was going door to door delivering things, right? Or going back to work or running the smaller. It's because they had employees also who were ready to reimagine themselves as part of that business. Um, I mean, I'm going through this very quickly, but I'll pass on this link if it will make any sense. Finally, another very important thing is about reimagining to thrive in various normals, right? As we are doing now. Having the right talent can facilitate the company's ability to do this. When teams play crucial roles in responding to market changes, it's crucial that they collaborate, that they invest, that they look at the importance of change, such as digital workforce or utilizing analytics, etc., as as things that they can move to doing. So what does all this mean? Obviously, the role you play, whether it is an employee or an employer, will differ in nature, especially when it comes to the level of risk you take. Obviously, the employer is taking a larger risk than employees, but your attitude and passion need not be different. Being entrepreneurial is a choice, and developing that from your get-go is not new. Those are the guys who have got to C-suite levels or have built companies that we are writing books about. So I mean, before I end, I have listed some good reads here, and I hope all of you all take this. So some 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, read it. Stephen Covey, again, founding principles on Stoicism. There's a little book of Stoicism. I can give this to, I can send the PDF version to one of the organizers. They can probably share the link with the viewers. Again, a very good read. Principles by Ray Dalio, and a series ACCA and PwC have collaborated to write on various examples, looking at different leaders or employees and employers who have gone on to build meaningful things. Thanks, Sharon. I'm ready to take any other questions.
Rathi, thanks for that presentation and for taking us through definitely some very valuable insights being shared. I have this question where I have noticed in people, once you leave school, you go through university life and then your parents kind of push you saying, get a job, work for someone. And then you go through that whole redundant life of working for someone, and then you feel kind of demotivated at times. Some of them are very positive. You grow. Some of them, it comes down. And that's where it perceives, okay, let me start my own thing. And then you want the financial to start or kick off. But the risk plays on. And then let's say your company does really, really well. And then you brought this very important point of sustainability. You need to change yourself in order to continue. And with this growing world of innovation, etc., it's tough. How do we keep a tab on what we do? It's like we need to keep a tab on TikTok now.
Okay, good question, Sharon. So I think that mentality, also largely Asian mentality, having your parents say you go for a job, work for someone. I very respectfully, something that I probably don't think is it's not redundant for everyone, right? So I think going down that path as a prescriptive approach, I completely agree with you, is probably one of the bigger problems that we have. Having said that, that you very nicely touched on was the financial part of it, right? So if you were allowed to explore and start your own thing from the get-go after school, you need to have sanity check, right? You need to either have your sanity check within you, which means building very strong self-awareness, like you very correctly said. How do you know? How do you keep up with this? Where do you stop? So one of the very important things, I mean, I have a lot of colleagues who have started or become entrepreneurs from the get-go, right? Maybe right after school or right after uni. And I completely, I'm inspired by them, right? Because it's a huge risk. You start with a little, and it's a lot of hard work because you don't have a prescriptive time, right? But those who have been successful, so So there's a survivorship bias, right? So you will only know about the people who have been successful. So they have also been beaten down the road, right? But one of the things that when you speak to them that you realize is that they wish they had, or the ones who are successful, they've had a very balanced approach of people around them who not just say, oh no, don't do it, don't do this, or you know what, oh you should do this. You can't, you have to have a balanced approach, people who are a bit brutally honest, and people who have also gone down that path. So with strong success, you don't need to reinvent that wheel. So you need to have that that sense of sanity check uh, and that self-awareness. And people who have had both of that and who have a broad-minded, your mind is broad enough to listen to someone say, hey, you know what, you have to stop this at this point. They go on to take the other steps. So keeping up with something is also having a very good peer network, Sharon. And I think a typical, again, another prescriptive thing that we all do is if we're entrepreneurs, we try to have our peers as other entrepreneurs or employees as other employees. But I think we need to branch out. So those who have had a vast variety of people who from different industries, different walks of life, different cycles, not just the successful ones. As I said, that will mean survivorship bias, right? You need to have that mix. If you look at the Insight poster, someone asked me this evening, you know, oh, this is a mixed set of people on this. What are you all going to talk about, right? So that's exactly how you keep tab on you know, what we need to do.
I wish you said that there's a lot of pretty people who are handling the webinar today. So
that too, Sharon. But yeah,
Rathi,
yes.
now let's go through the phase of being an entrepreneur. You know, there are people when they start, they want to take that risk, that challenge, and they enjoy the celebration of starting off and everything. But that sustainability doesn't last. You know, the whole negligence part just rolls in when they feel, okay, I have a team who is managing it. So they don't keep an eye as to how the business runs.
Yeah.
And that drops out. Where are we going wrong?
I think you answered. We go wrong at that complacency point of view, no, Sharon. I think the ones who the ones who have been able to manage sustainable businesses have been able to build that sustaining quality, right? And building and training their employees to carry that torch that they lit. I think where it falls short is when you think this is enough, or when you think, as you said, I'll take my hands off now, and you have inadequately trained people or inadequately having the same level of entrepreneurial skills as I said earlier. So that's largely largely one of the reasons. So I'll give you a very local example without mentioning the name. So in Colombo, we have this very popular pizza joint in Havelock Road. So a gentleman is known to us. We've known him since the time he was working at another pizza joint in Naval a few years ago. And my husband and I used to go there. And we've been in touch. And he tried a lot of things. And once he had a little bit of funding and a little bit of investing, he started this small thing on his own. And he used to do 50 pizzas a day. That's all he could do with the amount of working capital that he had. But it was amazing because he was he was the one who was making the pizzas, right? But then it caught up. It's one of the sought after pizza joints now. A lot of people go, business is off the roof. So one of the things we asked him a few years ago when we saw it, you know, moving to the next level is, how are you going to maintain quality? Because obviously he's not going to be making all the pizzas. But he did, and he's trained his boys really well. That taste is still the same. He's still there. He still supervises that particular thing. Obviously, because it's just still one store. At some stage, he will not be able to supervise every pizza, and I don't think he does that right now. But he's managed to maintain that consistency in quality, and that is probably the reason for that sustainability. It starts in something very small like that, but you drop the ball, it has a much bigger impact.
Yeah, and we've seen so many companies doing well like that, keeping a tab on how the operation runs, and very specially they need to keep a tab on the finance of the company, because that's where a lot of things really drops down, because sometimes they want investors to invest in, and then things can definitely go wrong.
Absolutely.
If you don't invest in the right person. Rathi, you being on this panel and you have challenged yourself, gone through the rough, how has it been being a woman to make it to the industry? How do you see yourself? How do you see the women in the future coming in to a different platform?
Okay, so to be very honest with you, Sharon, didn't I didn't face a lot of challenges because I am a woman. Obviously, from the kind of background I come from is a typical background where you give a lot of focus on education. So I come from
Rathi,
a conservative. Yes.
can I ask you whether you're a tomboy?
A mix.
A mix.
A mix.
Oh, that's
A mix.
interesting now.
Yeah. A mix. I like to dress pretty, but I also like to climb trees. So it's hybrid. But yes, so I mean, the background that I come from is very conservative in nature. A lot of focus was given on education, but not necessarily creating a career. Like that mindset of thinking, do you have to work? Or you work only if you have to make ends meet. But trying to think that, or you want to work by choice to build a career and do something meaningful with your life, was probably the only change or challenge that I had to challenge. Fortunately, I had a parent who challenged this and from the get-go said, there's no stopping a woman. But in terms of my corporate side, Sharon, I mean, I think in Sri Lanka, again, I've not worked in a lot of companies, but I've been blessed in the company that I am in. Very, I mean, zero discrimination for women. I've always been treated equally. Age, gender has never been a problem. That's also a function of the kind of industry we come from. I think it's very common in capital markets. Where also in Sri Lanka, I'm not definitely not discounting the issues people go through, but I think we've come a far way. We still have a long way to go, but I'm seeing very positive changes. And for a Asian conservative country, I think we've taken some good strides. I mean, even the recent appointment of a leading female individual in the corporate group CEO is all a big pat on the back for all of us, paving that way to go forward.
Congratulations, Rathi. Thanks for being with us on this panel and also bringing us some great insights. And I think, as you very rightly said, it's sometimes how we bring in that little perception to the corporate industry, how we manage and glide ourselves. I always keep saying, sometimes you have to act dumb, stupid, and play the smart game if you really want to thrive it through. And that's how you survive. What are your last and final thoughts that you would like to share to all our AIESEC viewers who are watching us right now?
So I think one of the key things I want to say is that whether you're female, male, or employer, employee, a few things that you cannot discount and there's no shortcut to is self-discipline, is ethics, work ethic, your general ethic, integrity, and hard work, right? So working smart works too, but I've said it in priority. It starts with self-discipline. And then everything else, all the questions that you once asked, Sharon, even as a female, the challenges that we come across, there are various other dark experiences that we go through, especially as women. But all of that, I think we can manage if we have these key
Qualities.
things qualities that have always been inbuilt in us from our childhood and parental backgrounds. I think 99% our parents would have said that. No one's saying don't have self-discipline, right? But for some reason, at some point, we shove it out of the window and say it's not required anymore. Qualities is an ingredient to failure. So the opposite of that is true. Keep that as your top priority, and the rest will work out. Thanks,
Those
Sharon.
who
Thank you very much.
didn't know, Rati is also a trained dancer for Bharatanatyam. We have to see her stunning performances probably in the coming days.
I'll just show you a picture.
Wow. Nice. Great to have you with us, Rati. I hope you can stay with us online, but
absolutely,
a real pleasure having you on AIESEC today for Insight 2020.
Likewise, Sharon. Thank you very much. I'll be online.
I'm going to cross over to our next speaker who has joined us for this very special discussion. He's the Chief Operating for Bristol Institute and Managing Director for ICOM Business School, who's also the Principal Partner joining us for Insight 2020. Dilshad Jiffry, how are you?
I'm good, Sharon. How are you doing this evening?
Well, I'm trying to avoid the concentration that's happening in the background. Full focus here. Dilshad, I understand that we're having a very important discussion and a very balanced webinar, I would say, having a female and a male, which we really don't care, because at the end of the day, it's our ideas, it's what we want to do in the future and how much of an interest or a passion that would drive us to do that. But how do you see this? As an employer, employee, this little debate will constantly move on even in the future. But there is a small change following COVID. A lot of people have designed themselves to be an entrepreneur. How do you see this, Dilshad?
Excellent, Sharon. First of all, very good evening to all of you. And thank you very much, AIESEC in University of Colombo for inviting me. And also thank you to my co-host, Rati. It's an interesting, topic, right? The moment they proposed it to me, I was like so excited, right? This is something that I love to talk to youngsters, right? Especially as I am very much interested in growth and development of youngsters, as that is the backbone of, a country's economy, right? So like you very correctly said, this COVID has taught us a lot of things, right? We can talk about it for days, right? But if we are to narrow it down to this particular topic, it has definitely created a lot of entrepreneurs. And to take the topic further, I think with your permission, I can share my presentation. Yep. So I would like to shed more light on this, using these presentation slides. I hope it's visible.
Yep, we can see it.
Yeah. Excellent.
An employee or the employer, who would you rather be? Yeah.
Yeah. So
Dilshad, which one are you?
Okay, I've been an employee and now I'm an employer. So that has been my, ambition has always been. So like I said, it's a very interesting question, and there's a lot of myths surrounding this topic, right? And still, there's a lot of research that is being done to who would make a good, employer, because that guy is like the entrepreneur. So let's dive a little deep and see, what's going on. Since there's a lot of youngsters in this forum, I thought I would highlight, something very important, right? Now, okay, I'm just showing you a red line, and people will be wondering what's going on, right? If you see, an average life expectancy of a Sri Lankan is somewhere around 70, right? And if you see all these, youngsters who are, join this forum, especially from AIESEC, and the students, average, they would have, average, they must be around 25 by now, meaning they have only about another 45 to go. Is that right?
We can ask them. We can, if while you guys are joining in the PPT, you can drop in the comment section on Facebook your age. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, something average, just to get them to, just to get, get involved.
Engagement,
so, See, in your 70-year life, 25 is already gone, So you have only another 45 to live, right? So there's so much to do, right? As we, as youngsters, you know, we want to achieve so much. Now, in this 45 years, right, you need to allocate time for your family, your hobbies, your friends, and when you get married, you know, your kids, they're going to take a lot of time, and of course, work. If you do a calculation, right, in terms of how much of time that you're going to spend on each of these factors, right? When it comes to your hobby, you will not have more than 2 years in this 45 years, because most of the time you're going to spend on the work element. So that is going to be your bread and butter, and that is going to be the deciding factor for the rest of your life. Because, I mean, as you know, the kind of job we do and, you know, what comes along with it pretty much gives us a social standing and how we are accepted in the society and so on. So the next 45 years in your life, right, is going to be very crucial. Especially, I would say, if you're 25 now, the next 10 years that you're going to invest is going to be really, really crucial, especially with regards to this particular topic of, you know, whether you want to be an employer or an employee.
Dilshad, right. I'm going to also interrupt saying there's a lot of comments coming from all our viewers. Thank you for sending us that. Most of them are between the ages of 21, 22, 23, 24. And then we have just one individual who has come at the age of 36. That's all right. It's good. It's good to have you as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. So it's a lot of youngsters, you know, so that's where a lot of, you know, blood is flowing, and, you know, so many things are going in their head and they don't know what to do sometimes. Right. So, okay, moving on. Now, all of us are going to be in this situation at one point, isn't it? We're going to cry, right? Now you have an important decision to make. Would you like to cry inside a Maruti? Or would you like to cry inside a BMW? Sharon, what do you think? What would you like to do?
Definitely BMW.
Exactly.
But I need time to get to that.
Exactly. So, see, this is the point that I would like to make. Comfort is important. Success is important. But how we define that comfort or success is even more important. Right? I mean, all of us are going to face failure, setbacks, right? But then we should be geared to face that. Be you're an employee or an employer. Right? So this is, you know, something that should be in your head like throughout, right? Life is going to give me lemons, fine. What am I going to make with it, right? So it's not going to be a free ride for anyone, right? No one has achieved things, you know, overnight or, you know, out of nothing. So this kind of picture you should always have in your head as youngsters, right? I mean, the road ahead of me is not going to be, you know, all bed of roses. So how do I make it, you know, proper? And as an employee, right now, some of you would want to work for large companies, right? As an employee, I mean, when I was studying, right? When I was studying for my CIMA qualification, I had a friend coming and telling me, you know, working for such and such an organization is my ambition. Then I was like, okay, what's the big deal? I mean, you just get a job. Right? I mean, okay, you tell me that you want to set up a, you know, space station. Yeah, that is big enough, right? But working for a company, because at least to me, it looked small, right? So as an employee, right, you get, you know, a fixed salary for a month. So, you know, your mind is at peace, right? And you get perks, you know, pay rise, employee allowances. Of course, you will have achievements. You will get health insurance, paid vacations. So with your job, certain benefits would, you know, come to you, which you can enjoy. And, you know, it will depend on the kind of contribution that you make to the organization. So as an employee, still you will get things, right? I don't know whether you will get the BMW, but you will definitely, you know, you can get a Maruti. So depending on how much of effort you put, of course, you know, what you get will, you know, increase. Because there's this theory, we don't get anything in life for free, right? The amount of do decides the amount of get, right? The amount of effort we put will decide how much we get in return. And to put the effort, we need to be very positive in the way we look at things, right? If you look at something and say, okay, this is not going to work, it's definitely not going to work, right? If you look at something and say, no, I'm going to make it work, yes, if you think you can, you're right. If you think you can't, you're right, right? So as an employee, also, you need to have high aspirations, right? Employee of not such and such a company, just like that, maybe, board director, chairman of few companies, or go up to be the CEO of Google, because that's when you really reap the benefits of being an employee, right? I'm not trying to say it's a bad thing. It is a good thing, provided you put your heart and soul into it, right? So being an employee gives you a lot of cushion to be at comfort and, have peace of mind, because you're not taking much of the risk. Someone else is taking the risk on behalf of you, which I'll come back to that in a while, right? So being an employee is not all that bad, but, it has its advantages and, of course, the limitations. So advantages, you can see in the slide that I have shown here. And you can choose which path to, endeavor in terms of being an employee, and then, pursue a particular career. I mean, gone are the days where you get to choose what you want to do. But now, most of the large organizations, they decide what you do, right? So it's becoming very tricky, right? In my career, I started at Unilever, an amazing organization. So that was a fantastic start. Then I moved to Expo Lanka Holdings, then from there to Dialogue. And then my last stint was at Browns Group. And then I decided, no, I want to be on my own. So first half of me so far has been, an employee phase. And now I'm, obviously an employer. So, and as an employer, right, you have, a different kind of task to face. And of course, the benefits that come with it. So as an employer, you're the captain of the ship, right? You decide when to go to office, when to open the office. You have basically control. And flexible working hours, right? I mean, there's no boss to you, you're the boss. So you decide, right, when to work and, how things should be done. And open-ended career progression and path, so there's so much you can do. You decide what you want to do. I mean, look at someone like Richard Branson, right? He's into Virgin Records, on the other side on an airline. There's so many things that goes on, right? Because you're the ultimate decision maker. So that kind of freedom is there when it comes to being an employer as opposed to an employee. And greater sense of satisfaction, when you achieve something, there's a massive satisfaction. Especially what I see now is when I get to pay salaries to others, and when I know that, people are making a living out of what effort that I do, that's a massive satisfaction. There's no words to, explain how great it is. And then diverse learning experience, you get to meet a lot of people because you are in the front line of, negotiations and things like that. So the experience is enormous. And forming positive habits and attributes. Of course, when you're an employer, you can't be late. Punctuality is very important, right? And you need to be there, right? And a lot of positive vibes need to be there. And then, like Rathi said, you can't have this giving up mindset, right? At whatever it may be, you need to face it, right? It's not easy, right? That is why there is a conception among people that, not everyone can be an employer, right? But I challenge that. With my last slide, I will challenge you, right? I mean, that particular conception. In my belief, there are certain qualities that you need to, bring up. So if you do that, even, I know anyone can be an employer, right? So a lot of positive habits, you need that energy, drive, passion towards what you do. And then enhance business networking, very important, right? You connect with people, you make new contacts, right? I mean, during our time, we did not have Facebook and LinkedIn and all these networks, but now, my goodness, I mean, you can connect to the world overnight, right? I mean, there's a theory called 6 degrees of connection, which you can check. I mean, you can connect to anyone if you want, right? So being an employer, that advantage is there to you, right? The moment you are in the driving seat, you connect to people, the big shots, the so-called big shots, right? And you make decisions, that will favor you. And higher motivation and morale, right? So because I'm in charge, this is my own thing. So, some people lose it halfway, and I'll tell you why in a while, but you should not, right? This motivation should be there throughout, right? If you lose it, then that's a problem. Motivation is like the, energy, the fuel for you to, drive this whole thing. And employment protection. So if your business is going well, right, you have a, business for life, right? Of course, sometimes employers fail, right? It happens, due to various reasons it happens, right? Not everything is within the control of an individual. So if you are an employer and if the business is going well, all set, and nothing to worry. And the ability to retire sooner. So this is, one of the factors that has motivated me also, right? Especially with, the first slide that I showed you with life expectancy and things like that. You can't be working till you're 70 and, not being able to do what you want to do in your life. So the sooner you retire, the better it is for you, and then you can enjoy what you want to do, with the rest of your life. So these are some of the perks or, the benefits of, being an employer as opposed to an employee, right? And now, whether you are an employer or an employee, both can be a successful endeavor, and both can be a failing endeavor. It depends on, certain controllable factors and certain uncontrollable factors. I'll just take one example. Now look at this whole COVID situation. Employers are going out of business, right? Some employers are minting money because that is favoring them. Similarly, these employers who are shutting down and the employees who work for them are losing jobs. So it can happen either way, right? But on which side of the table you want to be, okay, that's the biggest question, isn't it? So the presentation is still not over. So probably at the end you will realize, right? Moving on. I'm sure you can guess what these two images are trying to tell you, right? Now, if I may ask, okay, you see the Asian countries, and then you look at the Western world. In the Western world, if you take the countries and the population, by number, they are very less, as opposed to, the Asian counterparts, the countries and, the population. I mean, the Asian countries, the numbers are huge, right? And if you look at the Western world, numbers are very low, but the development is very high, right? If I may ask you, what is it, this one single factor that is making this different? What would it be? What do you think, right? I mean, we are big in numbers and we have, an whole history with us, right? But then those guys, look at, for example, the USA, like 330 years old, 330 million population, about 300 years old. And if you look at the dollar rate to the rupee rate, you know the difference, right? So what's happening? And look at the European, countries. Okay, and in Asia we can take few examples like Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam, right? So why are these guys, on a fast pace as opposed to us? So what is happening, right? In my view, right? I mean, I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and organizational, leaders, and of course, being in education, I talk to a lot of parents as well. In my view, the biggest factor that is, driving this difference is this, right? The ability to take risk, right? Now, look at us, right? Even a married couple would wait for their parents to decide the name for their child, isn't it? Which is very unfortunate, right? Even after you getting married, you still need to, wait for your parents' approval, a lot of things, because you are never let, to decide things on your own. While in the Western world, by the time you are 15, 16, you've been, put out, go, earn your bread, right? Find your shelter. So by the nature or the cultural setup, right? In those kind of, environments, they have been pushed to take risk, right? While in our setup, right? I mean, if we were even at 30, 35, 40, you are still under the, umbrella of your parents. So, research says before a child reaches the age of 3, a parent would say, don't 15,000 times and do only 5,000 times, right? So what is this child hearing? I mean, more often, right? Don't. So if you are trained by saying don't, then what are you going to do, right? You're not going to do anything, right? So it is this one single factor that has been, a deciding factor, right? Whether we are creating more employers or employees, because employers take risk. That is the fundamental thing, in any learning theory, you will learn that, employers are go-getters, risk takers, risk seekers, while the employees are risk-averse people. They don't like to, take that risk which the employers take, the entrepreneurs. So they are more passive, they like to, rest on someone else's shoulder. So it's a lot to do with, certain factors, which I would like to, quickly take up because the time is running out, which I call as the influencers, right? Firstly, the family. You go and say that you want to do this, the first barrier is your family. They'll say, okay, it's not going to work. Don't do it, right? Bang, the whole, ambition comes down. Then comes the culture. Culture is basically collective mental programs, right? It's a massive topic. It's how we think, how we do things, and if you look at, like I said, the Sri Lankan culture, we are a dependent, we have a dependency, thinking, right? For anything, we want the support of someone, right? We are not trained to, be on our own, which is mainly because of our education, right? In education, what we are doing is we are training people to work for someone else. We are not training people to start businesses on their own. That is the biggest problem. Take any qualification, right? It's all about, you maximize value to someone else. Why don't you maximize, value to yourself? That has been, the biggest question for me, right? I mean, we need to train children to be entrepreneurs, right? Employers, which would definitely, help the economy. I mean, learn about Vietnam, right? What they are doing. The Vietnam that is shown and the Vietnam that is actually out there is totally different, right? It is a country that took over 60 million people out of poverty within 30 years, right? And it's an enormous, there's been an enormous effort on, how they transform the economy, right? That is, I mean, one of the main contributors is education, right? So our education system should be, set up in such a way that it creates more entrepreneurs, more risk takers, more employers, right? And, who would do massive things to society. And finally, your friends, right? I mean, birds of a feather flock together, right? They say if you want to become rich, be with friends who are rich, right? If you want to achieve things, be with friends, who are, after achievements, because what they talk, how they, look at life, what they perceive, it comes to you as well, right? That's very important, the kind of group that you want to belong to, right? So these are some of the key influencers in terms of, what you would become, or, how you want to, take your career through. And finally, right, I don't want to answer this question, right? Think about it, right? Take some time, because for a lot of question in our lives, there's answers by looking at the nature, right? I mean, as you age, you'll understand, right? So you're still young, right? Think about nature. Is nature an employer or an employee? And if so, I mean, we are part of a bigger ecosystem, right? And in this ecosystem, we are just one variable. How is nature treating us? What do you think nature wants us to do? That will shed a lot of light, right? So be open to ideas. Don't let anyone kill your ideas. It's very important that you be with people who motivate you. And okay, I think time is running out, Sharon. If there's any questions, we can quickly take it.
Yep, you can drop in your questions in the Q&A section. And thank you, Dilshad, for taking us through some very valuable points, especially on taking risk, as well as someone else taking the risk for you, and how do we sort of work, and the importance of getting influencers. While we also want to quickly remind about the delegate form and the verification code, which is being shared already on the comment section. Delegates are supposed to fill it up and use the verification code that is shared on the Inside Delegates WhatsApp group, that is. And plus, we'll announce the winner of the Voice of the Change Challenge. But before that, if you have any questions, you can definitely drop in the comment section. Dilshad, I want to ask, now, we have this issue where we want to take the risk, and we plan ourselves, we work, etc. But we don't have a retirement plan. There is an issue that people come through to a point of life where, okay, I earn myself, I started my own thing, but the back of the plan is I don't have a plan there. Where should that plan come in?
See, that again is to do with our culture, right? I mean, the famous quote, never given up, ban tune, isn't it? So we have to come out of that mindset. Right, and children should be taught, okay, in your life there are stages, and there is this particular stage of retirement. So keep something for that as well, and then don't be a burden to your kids, right? And unfortunately, that is not happening. So once again, this has to be taught to our kids, and also, I mean, now there are financial institutions, which has introduced certain retirement plan schemes. So this has to come to the forums where youngsters now itself get onto that, and there's no other way in terms of how they would adopt that
in a situation. Okay, any final thoughts, Dilshad, that you want to give to our listeners? Well, I mean, these are very young, energetic people who doesn't need any guidance, will grasp anything that comes around and rolls in, whereas we were more of we're not saying that we're old, by the way, it's just that we're saying that we were the trained book system, whereas these individuals are more self-sufficient, can do it by themselves, will probably never get married because they're all moving into a different league of life. Yeah. How do you, or what sort of points would you like to give to our Insight audience?
Thanks, Sharon, for that question. I mean, for you guys, the limit to what you can do with the way, internet is connecting everything, right? There's so much of time ahead of you. Use it wisely. Stay away from useless social media and, unwanted news, right? Set an aim, go after it, right? Like I told you before, watch nature. Nature doesn't stop, and it continuously gives us what we want. So we human beings also can do that. It's just that we need to be focused. The biggest issue that I see nowadays is that youngsters have so much of distraction, right? You on your computer trying to search something on Google, but even after 2 hours, you haven't done that, you're doing something else, right? Don't be like that. Be focused, right? And go after your ambition. Focus, good thing to do is like maybe work for about 10 years for a company, get out and start something on your own, right? So finally, to answer the question, whether employee or employer, I would say both. First part of your life, be an employee, and then build your empire. And, like how Sharon wanted, have a huge balance so that you can retire free.
Fantastic points shared, Dilshad. Thank you very much for joining us in this session on behalf of AIESEC Insight 2020, University in Colombo. We'd like to thank both our partners as well as our speakers for joining us. We're also quickly going to announce the winners of the Voice the Change Challenge. The topics that were joined in was the rise of the robots, a threat to or an opportunity for meaningful work in the future. And the topic number 2 was gender gap in the workplace. Are working women really held back? In an interesting topics being shared, and the VTC winner is Hirudini Vikramanayaka from Faculty of Law, University of Colombo. Congratulations to you, Hirudini. I think the team will get in touch with you to give you a gift. A gift will come a long way. Also, a big shout out to all the participants who took part in the competition. Thanks a lot for being with us in or taking part, because that's the number one point of being a part of a competition. For those who have joined us in this webinar, thank you very much. It's great to be a part of Insight 2020 on behalf of the University of Colombo. We certainly hope you'll be wise in the decisions you take. And yes, it's always great to work for someone, gain some experience, start on your own, and also have a fruitful plan for the future, which is something that a lot of them don't do, because we live this kind of life where we go on, on the go kind of life. We need to move on to a certain plan and have a goal and achieve it. And don't give up on your dreams in whatever you want to achieve. I'm Shra Mascarenhas. Great to be with you on this webinar. Until I see you soon, somewhere, wherever you are, take care, because the numbers are not looking too great. Stay home and go out only if you really have to. And I hope you have a fantastic Friday evening. Take care.